The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the sounds of 100 different species. Clicks, chirps, growls, and electronic beeps filled the massive dome as representatives from across known space gathered for the emergency session. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Sarah Chen, the lone human among giants, insects, and beings of pure energy. "The Zephyrian Empire has broken the Outer Rim Treaty," announced Chancellor Vex, his forearms gesturing dramatically. The insectoid leader's compound eyes reflected the holographic display showing burning colonies across 3 star systems. "They have enslaved 14 worlds and show no signs of stopping." A low rumble of concern spread through the assembly. The Zephyrians were known for their advanced technology and ruthless military tactics. Their crystal-powered weapons could slice through most known armor, and their shield technology made their ships nearly indestructible. Worse yet, they stood 12 feet tall with natural armor plating and strength that could crush most species with bare hands. "The Council must act," declared General Thakmor of the Draknari Federation, his reptilian features twisted in anger. "My people have already lost 2 colonies to these monsters." Easy words from someone whose military failed so spectacularly, hissed Commander Silthara, her serpentine form coiling around her floating platform. The Hydran Defense Force lasted exactly 47 minutes against a single Zephyrian battle group. The chamber erupted in heated arguments. Species pointed claws, tentacles, and various appendages at each other, each blaming the others for military incompetence. Through it all, Sarah sat quietly, taking notes on her tablet and occasionally sipping from her water bottle. "What about the Corvin Elite Guard?" suggested someone from the back. "They held out for 3 days. 3 days, laughed Admiral Zix, his crystalline form shimmering with amusement. "The mighty Corvins, who conquered half the spiral arm, lasted 3 days. The Zephyrians are clearly unstoppable." Chancellor Vex raised all 4 arms for silence. "The situation is dire. Our combined fleets have suffered 60% casualties in just 2 months. The Zephyrians adapt to our tactics faster than we can develop new ones. They learn our weaknesses and exploit them perfectly." "Perhaps we should consider surrender terms," whispered Ambassador Moltar, his gelatinous form quivering with fear. "At least some of our people might survive." "Never," roared General Thakmor. "The Draknari do not surrender." "Then the Draknari will join the extinct," replied Commander Silthara coldly, "along with the rest of us." It was then that Sarah finally stood up. The chamber didn't immediately notice the small human rising from her seat, but gradually the arguing died down as beings became aware of her movement. At barely 5.5 feet tall, she looked like a child among the towering aliens around her. "Honored Council," Sarah began, her voice clear and calm despite the chaos around her. "Earth would like to offer our assistance in this matter." The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly the laughter began. It started as a few chuckles from the smaller species, but quickly grew into full-blown hysteria from the larger ones. General Thakmor's deep belly laugh shook the walls, while Admiral Zix's crystalline form actually cracked slightly from his amusement. "The humans want to help," wheezed Commander Silthara between fits of laughter. "Oh, this is rich. The species that barely achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago thinks they can defeat the Zephyrians." "No offense, Ambassador Chen," said Chancellor Vex, still chuckling, "but your people are known for their diplomatic skills, not their military might. What could Earth possibly offer that our advanced civilizations cannot?" Sarah remained calm, her expression unchanged. "We offer our soldiers." This triggered another wave of laughter, even louder than before. Several species were now holding their sides, or whatever passed for sides in their anatomy. "Your soldiers?" gasped General Thakmor. "Have you seen a Zephyrian warrior? They're 12 feet tall, covered in natural armor, and strong enough to tear apart a Draknari battle tank with their bare hands. Your humans are tiny, soft, and weak. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced strength. What possible threat could they pose? The average human soldier," continued Admiral Zix through his laughter, "stands barely 6 feet tall, has soft skin that can be punctured by a sharp stick, and possesses no special abilities whatsoever. They're prey animals who somehow stumbled into space travel." "Furthermore," added Commander Silthara, her serpentine form still shaking with mirth, "humans have no experience with real warfare. Your species has never fought anything more dangerous than each other. The Zephyrians have conquered dozens of worlds and defeated armies that would make your finest warriors wet themselves in terror. Sarah let the laughter continue for several more minutes before speaking again. I understand your skepticism. However, I should mention that Earth's military has developed some unique approaches to warfare that might prove effective against the Zephyrians. Unique approaches? Snorted General Thakmore. What could possibly be unique about human warfare? You swing primitive weapons and shoot basic projectiles. Even your energy weapons are centuries behind ours. We don't rely solely on technology, Sarah replied simply. We have other assets, such as? Demanded Chancellor Vex, his amusement finally beginning to fade. Well, Sarah said, pulling up a file on her tablet. We've brought some of our Special Forces units. Perhaps you'd like to meet them. Special Forces? Admiral Zix's crystalline form sparkled with renewed laughter. Oh, please, by all means, bring in your elite warriors so we can see these mighty humans who think they can succeed where entire galactic armies have failed. Sarah pressed a button on her tablet. Sergeant Harrison, please bring in Alpha Team. The main doors to the council chamber hissed open and 6 figures walked in. They moved with fluid precision, their black tactical gear making no sound against the polished floor. But it wasn't the humans that caused the sudden silence in the chamber. It was what walked beside them. 6 massive creatures padded into the room, their fur dark as midnight, eyes alert and intelligent, muscles rippling under their coats. They moved with predatory grace, ears constantly swiveling to track sounds, noses testing the air for scents. Each animal easily weighed over 100 pounds. With powerful jaws that held rows of gleaming white teeth, the laughter died completely. Council members, Sarah said with a slight smile, I'd like you to meet humanity's finest soldiers. We call them war dogs. The council chamber had fallen so quiet that the only sounds were the soft padding of paws on the polished floor and the barely audible breathing of the assembled aliens. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ was fixed on the 6 creatures that had entered with the human soldiers. The war dogs moved with a confidence that seemed to fill the entire space. Their heads swiveled constantly, taking in every detail of their surroundings. One of them, a massive German shepherd with distinctive black and tan markings, looked directly at General Thakmore and held his gaze. The Draknari general, who had faced down charging Corvin battle rhinos without flinching, felt an unexpected chill run down his armored spine. These are animals, whispered Ambassador Moltar, his gelatinous form rippling with confusion. You brought pets to a war council? Sergeant Harrison, a weathered human with gray at his temples, stepped forward. Unlike the imposing aliens around him, he looked completely ordinary except for his eyes. Those eyes held the same watchful intelligence as the creatures beside him, constantly scanning for threats and opportunities. With respect, sir, Harrison said in a gravelly voice. These aren't pets. Meet Rex, Luna, Thor, Saber, Ghost, and Phantom. They're combat veterans with over 200 successful missions between them. Commander Silthara's serpentine form uncoiled slightly as she leaned forward for a better look. They appear to be some form of canine. We have similar species on several worlds. They're pack hunters, reasonably intelligent for animals but hardly a match for advanced military technology. That's what the Craxi pirates thought, replied Sergeant Harrison calmly. Right up until Rex here tracked their leader through 12 miles of underground tunnels that our scanners couldn't penetrate. Took him down silent and clean before the rest of the pirates even knew we were there. Rex's ears perked up at the mention of his name, but his eyes never left General Thakmore. There was something in that steady gaze that made the giant reptilian warrior distinctly uncomfortable. Impressive for hunting criminals, said Admiral Zix, his crystalline form shimmering with skepticism. But we're discussing warfare against the most advanced military force in known space. How exactly do you expect these creatures to survive weapons that can disintegrate matter at the molecular level? The same way they survived the siege of New Tokyo, answered another human soldier, Corporal Martinez. She was smaller than Harrison, but carried herself with the same quiet confidence. When the separatists took over the government complex, they had energy shields, automated defenses, and enough firepower to level a city block. And? Chancellor Vex prompted, his forearms crossed skeptically. Luna found a way in through the storm drains, Martinez continued, reaching down to scratch behind the ears of a sleek black Labrador. She guided our team through a route that bypassed every sensor and security system they had. The separatists were so focused on their high-tech defenses that they never considered something as simple as scent tracking through forgotten maintenance tunnels. The aliens exchanged glances. This was not what they had expected from humanity's offer of military assistance. "You're suggesting," said Commander Silthera slowly, "that these animals succeeded where advanced reconnaissance technology failed?" "Not animals," corrected Sarah Chen from her seat. "Partners. The bond between human and dog goes back thousands of years. It's something that can't be replicated by technology or understood by those who haven't experienced it." To demonstrate her point, Harrison simply looked at Rex and made a subtle hand gesture. The massive German shepherd immediately moved to the left side of the chamber, positioned himself where he could see all the exits, and sat down. No words had been spoken, no electronic commands given, yet the communication had been perfect and instantaneous. "Parlor tricks," scoffed General Thakmore, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "The Zephyrians have telepathic communication systems and adaptive AI networks. What possible advantage could this primitive bond provide?" "The Zephyrians rely on technology," Sarah explained, standing up again. "Their entire military doctrine is based on technological supremacy. They analyze electronic communications, hack digital networks, and exploit technological weaknesses, but they can't hack instinct. They can't decrypt a relationship built on trust and understanding that's deeper than words." Corporal Martinez stepped forward with Thor, a massive Rottweiler whose dark eyes seemed to look right through the assembled aliens. "During the Outer Colony Rebellion, the insurgents were using quantum encryption that our best codebreakers couldn't crack. They had us completely cut off from command and communication." "How did these dogs help with a communication problem?" asked Ambassador Moltar. "They didn't break the code," Martinez replied. "They didn't need to." Thor tracked the enemy commander by scent across 3 different space stations. "We followed him through maintenance shafts, cargo holds, and areas that didn't even show up on the station schematics. While the rebels were focused on their electronic countermeasures, Thor led us straight to their command center." Another human soldier, Lieutenant Kim, spoke up from beside Ghost, a gray and white Siberian husky with mismatched eyes. "The Zephyrians are used to fighting enemies who think like them. They expect logical tactical responses, predictable strategies based on technological capabilities. They have never faced an enemy that thinks with pack instincts and operates on nonverbal communication. These creatures are still flesh and blood," Admiral Zix pointed out. "Zephyrian weapons will kill them just as easily as any other biological entity." "That's true," agreed Harrison. "But they can't kill what they can't hit, and they can't hit what they can't detect." He gestured to Phantom, a lean Belgian Malinois whose coat seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Phantom once infiltrated a heavily guarded weapons facility by following a path that no sensor could track. He used shadows, ventilation systems, and natural blind spots that the facility's designers never considered. The guards had motion detectors, heat sensors, and electromagnetic scanners, but they couldn't detect something that moved like a ghost and thought like a predator. The council chamber was no longer filled with laughter. Instead, a thoughtful silence had settled over the assembled species. These humans were describing military tactics that went beyond technology, beyond the conventional understanding of warfare that had dominated galactic conflicts for centuries. "What exactly are you proposing?" Chancellor Vex asked finally. Sarah Chen smiled, and for the first time since the war dogs had entered the chamber, there was something predatory in her expression too. "The Zephyrians have never faced Earth's military doctrine. They don't understand how we fight, how we think, or how we've survived every challenge our world has thrown at us for millions of years." She gestured to the 6 dogs and their human partners. "They're about to learn that evolution created the perfect warriors long before anyone invented energy weapons or force fields. They're about to discover why humans and dogs conquered an entire planet together, and why that partnership has never been broken." "When do we deploy?" asked General Thakmore, and for the first time his voice held respect rather than amusement. The transport ship Eternal Vigilance cut through hyperspace toward the contested Kepler 442 system, where Zephyrian forces had established their forward operating base. General Thakmore stood in the observation deck, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the reinforced viewport, but his attention was focused on the unusual passengers in the cargo bay below. Through the transparent aluminum floor, he could see the human soldiers going through their preparations. Unlike other species' pre-battle rituals involving equipment checks, meditation, or combat stimulants, the humans were doing something completely different. They were playing with their dogs. Sergeant Harrison was throwing a rubber ball for Rex, who caught it midair and brought it back with what could only be described as joy in his movements. Corporal Martinez was wrestling gently with Luna, their mock combat looking more like a dance than training. Lieutenant Kim was brushing Ghost's thick coat while the husky leaned into the attention with obvious pleasure. "I still don't understand," muttered Commander Silthera, her serpentine form coiled beside the Drachnary general. "We're heading into the most dangerous battle of the war, and they're engaging in recreational activities with their animals." "Not animals," corrected Sarah Chen, who had been standing quietly at the viewport's edge. "Partners. And they're not playing, they're bonding, strengthening the connection that makes them effective as a team." Admiral Zix materialized beside them, his crystalline form reflecting the strange lights of hyperspace. "I've been analyzing the tactical data from the human military archives that Ambassador Chen provided. Their success rate is unprecedented." "How unprecedented?" asked General Thakmore. "In the last 50 years of human conflicts, units that included these war dogs had a mission success rate of 97%. Compare that to our best special forces units, which average 72% against conventional enemies." Commander Silthera's scales rippled with skepticism. "Against other humans. The Zephyrians are not humans." "No," agreed Sarah. "They're not, but they think like us. They use technology, tactics, and strategies that any advanced civilization would recognize. They've conquered other species by being stronger, faster, and more technologically advanced. They've never faced an enemy that thinks completely differently." Down in the cargo bay, the human preparations continued. Sergeant Harrison was now fitting Rex with a special harness that seemed to contain multiple sensors and communication devices, but he was also taking time to scratch the dog behind the ears and speak to him in low, encouraging tones that clearly meant more than the words themselves. "The psychological profiles of Zephyrian warriors show they're supremely confident," Admiral Zix observed. "They believe their technological superiority makes them invincible. They've never encountered an enemy that could challenge them on a non-technological level." "That's about to change," said a new voice. They turned to see Captain Morrison, the human commanding officer of the War Dog unit, approaching with Saber, a massive black German shepherd with distinctive silver markings around his muzzle. "Captain," General Thakmore acknowledged, "your team seems remarkably calm for soldiers heading into certain death." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Certain death? Who said anything about certain death?" "The Zephyrians have never been defeated in direct combat," Commander Silthera pointed out. "Their military doctrine is flawless, their technology is superior, and their warriors are physically capable of tearing most opponents apart with their bare hands." "All true," Morrison agreed, scratching Saber behind the ears. "But they've also never fought an enemy that doesn't play by their rules." "Explain," demanded General Thakmore. Morrison gestured toward the viewport, though his eyes remained on his companions below. "The Zephyrians expect their enemies to meet them head-on. They expect logical tactical responses, predictable strategies, and warfare conducted according to established galactic conventions. They've built their entire military around countering those approaches." "And humans don't follow galactic conventions?" asked Admiral Zix. "Humans wrote their own book on warfare long before we met the galactic community," Morrison replied. "And we wrote it with partners who think in ways that no artificial intelligence can replicate." He pointed to Ghost, who was now lying on his back while Lieutenant Kim rubbed his belly. To the aliens, it looked like simple affection, but Morrison saw something different. Right now, Kim is feeling Ghost's heartbeat, checking his muscle tension, assessing his mental state through 100 subtle cues that she's learned to read over years of partnership. Ghost is doing the same with her. They're not just bonding, they're synchronizing. When they go into combat, they'll function as a single unit with enhanced senses, doubled awareness, and perfect trust. The Zephyrians have neural link technology that provides superior communication and coordination, Commander Silthera argued. "Neural links can be jammed, hacked, or disrupted," Morrison replied. "The bond between a human and a dog can't be interfered with because it doesn't rely on technology. It's biological, emotional, and spiritual all at once." General Thakmore studied the humans below with new interest. "Show me what you mean." Morrison simply looked at Saber and made an almost imperceptible gesture with his hand. The massive dog immediately stood up, moved to a position near the cargo bay entrance, and lay down in a way that looked casual, but actually provided him with a clear view of all approaches to the area. No words had been spoken, no signals that the aliens could detect had been given. "How?" asked Admiral Zix. 15 years of partnership, Morrison explained. "Saber knows me better than I know myself sometimes. He can read my intentions from my body language, my scent, my breathing patterns. I can tell his emotional state from the position of his ears, the way he holds his tail, the rhythm of his panting. But surely technology can replicate that level of communication," Commander Silthara insisted. "No," said Sarah Chen firmly, "because it's not just communication. It's trust built over years of shared experiences, mutual dependence, and genuine affection. You can't program that into a machine, and you can't fake it." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all passengers. We will be dropping out of hyperspace in 30 minutes. All combat units report to battle stations." Morrison turned to leave, but General Thakmore stopped him with a question. "Captain, what makes you so confident that your methods will work against an enemy that has defeated armies 10 times your size?" Morrison paused, looking down at Saber, who had risen and moved to his side without being called. "General, every species in this galaxy became dominant on their home world through strength, technology, or intelligence. Humans became dominant through partnership. We learned to work with other species, to understand them, to trust them completely." He gestured toward his team, now preparing their final equipment checks. "The Zephyrians have never faced an enemy that hunts in packs, thinks in pack terms, and fights with pack loyalty. They're about to learn that the most dangerous predator isn't always the biggest, strongest, or most technologically advanced. It's the one that never hunts alone," Sarah added quietly, as if responding to some unheard signal. All 6 dogs in the cargo bay turned their heads toward the viewport where the command group was standing. For a moment, 12 canine eyes met the gazes of some of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. General Thakmore felt that same chill he had experienced in the council chamber. These weren't just animals or even just weapons. They were something else entirely, something that his warrior culture had no equivalent for. They were family willing to die for each other, and that, he was beginning to realize, might be exactly what it took to defeat an enemy that had never known defeat. The Zephyrian fortress on Kepler 442b was a monument to technological superiority. Crystalline spires rose from the planet's surface like twisted metal thorns, each one bristling with energy weapons that could vaporize an approaching starship from orbit. Force field generators created an impenetrable dome over the entire complex, while underground tunnels honeycombed the rock beneath, creating a maze of defensive positions that had proven impossible to breach. 3 previous assault attempts had failed catastrophically. The Draknari had lost an entire battle group trying a frontal assault. The Hydran fleet had attempted an orbital bombardment that barely scratched the fortress's shields. Even the technologically advanced Corvin Elite Guard had been systematically destroyed when they tried to infiltrate through the underground passages, their every move tracked by sophisticated sensor networks. Now, as dawn broke over the alien landscape, a small human dropship descended toward the planet's surface 20 kilometers from the fortress. No fanfare, no massive fleet, just 12 figures and their 6 four-legged companions approaching what every military analyst in the galaxy considered an impregnable position. Commander Zakthul, the Zephyrian fortress commander, watched the approaching ship through his command center's holographic displays. At 12 feet tall with natural armor plating that could deflect most energy weapons, he was a perfect example of Zephyrian superiority. His forearms moved across control surfaces with practiced efficiency, while his compound eyes tracked multiple data streams simultaneously. "A single small craft," he reported to his subordinates, his voice carrying the harmonic tones typical of his species. "No escort vessels, no orbital support. The readings indicate minimal weapons and a crew of less than 20. Perhaps they intend to surrender," suggested Subcommander Veltara, her crystalline carapace gleaming under the command center's lights. "More likely a reconnaissance mission," replied Zakthul. "Let them land. Our sensor nets will track their every movement, and when they attempt their futile infiltration, we will capture them and learn the disposition of the remaining enemy forces." 20 kilometers away, the human dropship touched down in a valley between 2 ridgelines. The landscape was barren and rocky, offering little cover for an approaching force. Perfect defensive terrain from the Zephyrian perspective. since it left any attackers completely exposed to their advanced targeting systems. Sergeant Harrison was the first to emerge from the ship, followed immediately by Rex. The German Shepherd's nose went to work instantly, testing the alien air and cataloging scents that his human partner couldn't detect. Behind them came the rest of Alpha Team, Martinez with Luna, Kim with Ghost, Thompson with Thor, Rodriguez with Phantom, and finally Captain Morrison with Saber. Atmospheric composition is within acceptable parameters, reported Lieutenant Kim, checking her readings. Gravity is 0.87 Earth normal. Air pressure is slightly elevated but breathable. Forget the technical specs, said Harrison, watching Rex's behavior carefully. How do they feel about it? It was an odd question to anyone not familiar with human-dog partnerships, but the other team members understood immediately. Rex's ears were forward and alert but not pinned back in anxiety. His tail was level, indicating confidence rather than aggression or fear. Most importantly, his body language showed curiosity rather than distress. They're good with it, Harrison confirmed. Rex says the air smells clean. No immediate chemical threats. Captain Morrison knelt beside Saber not to check equipment but to establish the mental connection that would guide their mission. The massive dog looked directly into his eyes, and for a moment they seemed to communicate on a level that had nothing to do with words or signals. Saber's picking up electromagnetic signatures from the fortress, Morrison announced. He can sense the field generators humming, also detecting multiple patrol patterns in the underground tunnels. The alien observers watching from the command center would have been puzzled by this exchange. Their sensors showed no way for the humans to detect fortress operations from this distance. Yet somehow they were gathering intelligence that matched their own internal security reports. "Sir," said Corporal Martinez, as Luna lifted her head and pointed her nose toward a specific direction. Luna's indicating a scent trail, something that passed through here recently. "Zephyrian patrol," confirmed Thompson, following Thor's lead toward a cluster of rocks. "Thor says they came through here about 6 hours ago. 4 individuals heading northeast." To the watching Zephyrians, it appeared that the humans were simply following their animals around the landing site randomly. Their sensors detected no communications equipment sophisticated enough to provide the intelligence the humans seemed to be gathering. What they couldn't detect was millions of years of evolutionary partnership in action. "Ghosts found something interesting," reported Kim from a position near the ridgeline. The Siberian husky was focused on a small crevice in the rock face that was invisible to human eyes, but clearly significant to his enhanced senses. "There's an air current coming from deep underground. This connects to their tunnel system." "How deep?" asked Morrison. Kim placed her hand on Ghost's back, feeling the subtle changes in his breathing and posture that told her about air pressure and scent concentration. "He's indicating it goes down at least 50 meters, then levels off. The air smells of metal and electronics. Phantom's got a different trail," called Rodriguez from the opposite side of the landing zone. The Belgian Malinois was following a scent path that led directly toward the fortress, but passed through terrain that looked completely impassable to human eyes. "What kind of trail?" Morrison asked. "Water," Rodriguez replied, interpreting Phantom's behavior. "Underground water flow. It runs beneath the fortress perimeter and emerges somewhere inside their defensive grid." In the Zephyrian command center, Sub-Commander Veltara was studying the tactical displays with growing confusion. "Sir, the humans appear to be conducting some form of reconnaissance, but our sensors detect no active scanning from their position." "Perhaps they're using passive observation techniques," replied Commander Zachthul. "No matter. They cannot possibly penetrate our defenses with such a small force. Should we deploy interceptor units? No, let them waste their time. When they inevitably attempt their pathetic assault, we will demonstrate Zephyrian superiority once again." Back at the landing site, Captain Morrison was analyzing the intelligence his team had gathered through methods that no military academy in the galaxy would recognize as valid reconnaissance techniques. "We have 3 potential infiltration routes," he announced. "Rex and Harrison will take the direct approach through the main tunnel system. They'll provide the distraction while drawing attention to the most obvious infiltration point. Luna and I will follow the underground water system," added Martinez. "If Phantom's right about the water flow, we can bypass their outer perimeter entirely. Ghost, Kim, Thor, and Thompson will use the ridge approach," Morrison continued. The air currents Ghost detected suggest ventilation shafts that their designers never expected anyone to find. What about you and Saber? Asked Harrison. Morrison smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression that his alien opponents would have recognized if they could have seen it. Saber and I are going to walk right through the front door. Sir? The Zephyrians have never faced an enemy that doesn't think like them, Morrison explained. They expect infiltration, stealth, and clever technological solutions. They don't expect someone to simply announce their presence and rely on abilities they can't understand or counter. Saber's ears perked up, and he looked directly at Morrison with what could only be described as anticipation. After 15 years of partnership, the dog understood the plan even though no words had been spoken. Everyone clear on objectives? Morrison asked. 6 voices and 6 enthusiastic tail wags confirmed their readiness. Then let's go show the galaxy what real soldiers look like. The first indication that something was wrong came from Sensor Station 7, deep within the Zephyrian Fortress's underground complex. Technician Mordak stared at his displays in confusion, his forearms moving across the controls as he tried to understand what he was seeing. Sub-Commander, he called to Veltara, his harmonic voice carrying a note of uncertainty. I'm detecting an anomaly in Tunnel Network Delta. What kind of anomaly? Veltara moved to his station, her crystalline carapace reflecting the blue glow of the monitoring screens. The motion sensors show movement, but the thermal imaging doesn't detect any heat signatures. The electromagnetic scanners are picking up standard human readings, but only for one individual. The second signature appears to be... He paused, rechecking his instruments. Biological, but not registering as any known species. In Tunnel Network Delta, Sergeant Harrison moved through the darkness with Rex at his side. The German Shepherd's enhanced senses had already mapped the entire tunnel system, identifying guard positions, sensor locations, and patrol patterns that the Zephyrians thought were secret. Harrison didn't need night vision equipment. Rex's behavior told him everything he needed to know about their surroundings. A slight change in the dog's breathing indicated guards ahead. A shift in ear position warned of automated defenses. The angle of his tail communicated whether threats were moving toward them or away. 2 guards at the intersection ahead, Harrison whispered, reading Rex's signals. They're facing away from us, probably monitoring the main tunnel approach. Rex's nose twitched, and he looked back at Harrison with what could only be described as a questioning expression. Yes, Harrison confirmed, understanding the unspoken communication. We go around. To the Zephyrian sensors, it appeared that the intruders had simply vanished. Motion detectors lost track of them completely, while thermal imaging showed brief glimpses of heat signatures that seemed to move through areas where movement should have been impossible. Meanwhile, 20 meters below the main fortress, Corporal Martinez followed Luna through the underground water system that Phantom had detected. The Labrador moved through the flooded tunnels with natural swimming ability, her enhanced senses guiding them through passages that didn't appear on any Zephyrian schematic. Luna's indicating an air pocket ahead, Martinez reported through her comm unit, her voice barely above a whisper. Water level is dropping, which means we're approaching their foundation level. Above them, in the fortress's lower levels, Zephyrian technicians were baffled by readings that suggested water pressure fluctuations in areas that supposedly contained no water at all. Sir, reported another technician to Sub-Commander Veltara, the Foundation sensors are showing irregularities. It's as if something is moving through the rock itself. At the fortress's eastern perimeter, Lieutenant Kim and Ghost had found the ventilation shaft network that connected to the main fortress. The Siberian Husky's ability to detect air currents had led them to openings that were invisible to Zephyrian scanners. Ghost says the airflow changes every 30 seconds, Kim reported. There's an automated system that cycles air through different sectors. If we time it right, we can ride the air currents straight into their command levels. Thompson and Thor had taken a different route, following scent trails that led to what appeared to be a solid rock face. But Thor's behavior indicated something the humans couldn't see with their eyes. Thor's showing me something, Thompson whispered into his comm. There's a hidden entrance here. The rock is artificial, probably a camouflaged maintenance access. In the command center, Commander Zakthul was beginning to realize that his fortress was under assault by an enemy that didn't follow any known tactical doctrine. Report, he demanded, his forearms moving across multiple control surfaces simultaneously. Sir, we have confirmed intruders in at least 4 different locations, but our tracking systems can't maintain locks on any of them, reported Veltara. They appear to be using some form of technology that makes them undetectable to our sensors. Impossible. Our sensor networks can detect the movement of individual molecules. No stealth technology in the galaxy can evade our detection systems. Nevertheless, sir, they are inside our perimeter and approaching critical areas. But the greatest shock was yet to come. At the fortress's main entrance, Captain Morrison walked directly up to the primary security checkpoint with Saber at his side. No stealth, no deception, no attempt at infiltration. He simply knocked on the door. The Zephyrian guards at the entrance stared in disbelief at the tactical displays. A single human stood outside their impregnable fortress, requesting entry as if he were visiting for tea. "Should we incinerate him, sir?" asked Guard Captain Thexara. "No," replied Commander Zakthol through the communication system, his voice filled with curiosity rather than concern. "I want to know what he thinks he's doing. Open communication channels. Human." Zakthol's voice boomed across the external speakers. "You stand before the most fortified position in this sector. Surrender now and your death will be swift." Morrison looked up at the sensors he knew were watching him and smiled. Beside him, Saber sat calmly, his tail wagging slightly as if he were enjoying the conversation. "Commander Zakthul," Morrison replied, somehow knowing the Zephyrian leader's name despite having no access to enemy communications. "I'm here to offer you terms for surrender." The silence that followed was broken only by the harmonic laughter that echoed from the fortress's speakers. "You offer me terms?" Zakthol's amusement was clear in his voice. "Human, you are one individual with a single animal companion standing before a fortress that houses 10,000 of the galaxy's finest warriors. What possible threat could you represent?" Morrison reached down and scratched Saber behind the ears. The massive dog looked up at him with absolute trust and devotion, then turned his attention back to the fortress as if calculating angles and distances. "Commander," Morrison said calmly, "you're right that I'm just one human with one dog, but I'm not alone. Explain. My friends are already inside your fortress. In fact, by my count, they should be reaching your critical systems right about now." As if summoned by his words, alarms began blaring throughout the Zephyrian complex. Red warning lights bathed the command center as status reports flooded in from across the facility. Power grid compromised in Section 7. Life support systems offline in the eastern quarter. Weapon control systems unresponsive. How? Demanded Commander Zakthol, his supreme confidence beginning to crack. Morrison's smile widened. "Because you built your defenses to stop armies, Commander. You never considered what would happen if your enemy was a pack." Chaos erupted throughout the Zephyrian fortress, as systems that had never failed began shutting down one by one. In the command center, Sub-Commander Veltara's crystalline form flickered with stress patterns as she tried to coordinate responses to simultaneous breaches across the facility. "Security Team Alpha, respond to Section 7, she commanded, her harmonic voice rising in pitch. "Security Team Beta, investigate the eastern quarter power failures." But the response she received was unlike anything in Zephyrian military history. "Team Alpha reporting. We've reached Section 7, but there's nothing here. No intruders, no evidence of sabotage. The power grid just stopped working." Commander Zakthul's forearms moved frantically across his command interfaces, trying to understand how an impregnable fortress was being systematically dismantled by an enemy he couldn't see or comprehend. Deep in the facility's power generation section, Luna emerged from the water system with Martinez close behind. The Labrador's enhanced senses had led them to the exact location where the fortress's power conduits converged, a junction point that wasn't marked on any schematic, but was obvious to a creature that could smell electrical current. "Luna's indicating the primary power relay," Martinez whispered, watching the dog's behavior carefully. "She can sense the electromagnetic fields. The main conduit is right behind this panel." Martinez placed a small device against the indicated wall, not an explosive or an energy weapon, but something far more sophisticated, a localized electromagnetic pulse generator designed to disrupt crystalline technology without affecting biological systems. The device activated silently, sending carefully calibrated energy waves through the Zephyrian crystals that powered their technology. To the fortress's sensors, it appeared that the power system simply failed naturally. No explosion, no obvious sabotage, just a gradual cascade failure that their automated systems couldn't explain or prevent. 3 levels above, Sergeant Harrison and Rex had reached the fortress's communication center. The German Shepherd's ability to detect electromagnetic fields had guided them through a maze of corridors that bypassed every security checkpoint. Rex is showing me the communication hub, Harrison reported through his comm unit. But he's also indicating something else. There are Zephyrian guards nearby, but they're not moving. Rex's behavior was telling a story that Harrison had learned to read over years of partnership. The dog's ears were forward but relaxed, indicating that he sensed presence, but not immediate threat. His nose was working constantly, analyzing scents that revealed the emotional state of beings he couldn't see. They're confused, Harrison realized, interpreting Rex's signals. The guards are staying at their posts, but they don't understand what's happening. This was the critical difference between human dog teams and conventional military units. Where other species would have engaged the guards directly, Harrison and Rex simply waited. They observed, analyzed, and understood their enemy's psychological state before taking action. When the guards inevitably left their posts to investigate the power failures, Rex led Harrison directly to the communication center through a route that avoided all remaining security measures. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Kim and Ghost had reached the fortress's atmospheric control systems by following air currents that led to the facility's environmental nerve center. The Siberian Husky's ability to detect minute changes in air pressure and composition had guided them to systems that the Zephyrians considered impossible to locate from outside. Ghost is indicating the main atmospheric processor, Kim reported. But he's also showing me something else. There are chemical traces in the air that suggest the Zephyrians use a specific atmospheric mixture. She analyzed Ghost's behavior patterns, reading the subtle signals that indicated her partner's assessment of their environment. They're vulnerable to standard Earth atmosphere. Their natural armor provides protection against energy weapons, but it doesn't seal them against atmospheric changes. Kim activated a second device, one that began introducing Earth-normal atmospheric mixture into the Zephyrian environmental systems. Not enough to harm the aliens, but sufficient to make them drowsy and reduce their reaction times. In the fortress's structural engineering section, Thompson and Thor had located the facility's gravitational control systems. The Rottweiler's ability to sense minute changes in gravitational fields had led them to the generators that maintained the fortress's artificial gravity. Thor's reading fluctuations in the gravity field, Thompson reported. The generators are crystalline-based, like their other technology. They're vulnerable to the same electromagnetic disruption techniques. But Thompson didn't immediately activate his disruption device. Instead, he waited, following Thor's lead as the dog analyzed the complex interplay of forces that kept the massive fortress stable. Thor's showing me the resonance patterns, Thompson continued, interpreting his partner's behavior. If we disrupt the gravity generators at the right frequency, we can create a harmonic feedback that will make the entire fortress feel like it's constantly shifting and moving. Not dangerous, but extremely disorienting. Rodriguez and Phantom had taken the most dangerous assignment, locating and neutralizing the fortress's weapon control systems. The Belgian Malinois had guided his partner through a network of maintenance tunnels that led directly to the heart of the facility's offensive capabilities. Phantoms indicating multiple electromagnetic signatures, Rodriguez reported. The weapon systems are more complex than the other technologies. They have redundant power sources and backup systems. But Phantom's enhanced senses revealed something that conventional reconnaissance would have missed. The weapon systems weren't just powered by crystals. They were controlled by them. The entire network relied on crystalline matrices that resonated in harmony to coordinate targeting and firing sequences. Phantom's showing me the control crystals, Rodriguez continued. They're not just technology. They're grown like living organisms. They respond to specific harmonic frequencies. Rodriguez activated a device that generated subsonic vibrations, frequencies that disrupted the crystalline control matrices without destroying them. The weapon systems didn't explode or shut down dramatically. They simply became unable to coordinate their targeting, like a musical orchestra where every instrument was playing in a different key. Back at the main entrance, Captain Morrison continued his conversation with Commander Zakthul while Saber sat calmly beside him, somehow projecting an aura of absolute confidence despite being surrounded by 10,000 enemy warriors. "Your power systems are offline," Morrison observed conversationally. "Your communications are disrupted, your environmental controls are compromised, your gravitational systems are unstable, and your weapons can't coordinate targeting. Would you like me to continue?" "How?" Zakthul's voice carried a note of desperation that had never been heard from a Zephyrian commander before. "Our sensors detect no weapons, no explosives, no energy signatures that could account for this level of systematic disruption." Morrison knelt beside Saber, scratching the dog behind the ears while looking directly up at the sensors he knew were watching him. "Commander, you're thinking like a Zephyrian. You're looking for technological solutions to a technological problem. But we're not using technology to defeat you." "Then what?" "We're using evolution," Morrison replied simply. "Millions of years of partnership between humans and dogs created something that can't be replicated, can't be understood, and can't be defeated by conventional military doctrine." Saber's tail wagged once as if agreeing with his partner's assessment. "You built the perfect fortress to defend against any enemy you could imagine," Morrison continued. "But you never imagined an enemy that doesn't think like you, doesn't fight like you, and doesn't need technology to understand your weaknesses." The alarms throughout the fortress gradually fell silent as system after system came under human control. Not destroyed, not damaged, but simply neutralized. "Your move, Commander." The silence that fell over the Zephyrian fortress was more profound than any battle cry. For the first time in their species' military history, a Zephyrian commander faced an enemy that had achieved total victory without firing a single shot. Commander Zakthul stood in his darkened command center, emergency lighting casting strange shadows across his armored form. Around him, his subordinates waited for orders that he couldn't give, solutions to a problem he couldn't understand. "Sir," Sub-Commander Veltara's voice was barely above a whisper, "all critical systems are under enemy control. Power communications, life support, weapons, gravitational systems. They haven't destroyed anything, but we can't operate any of our technology." 10,000 warriors, Zakthul said quietly, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. "And we've been defeated by 6 humans and 6 animals." "Not animals," came a new voice from the command center's entrance. Captain Morrison stood in the doorway with Saber at his side, having somehow passed through security systems that should have been impenetrable. "Partners." The Zephyrian guards raised their weapons, but Morrison held up a hand. "Your weapons won't fire. The targeting systems are offline, and the power distribution network has been rerouted. You could try to fight us hand-to-hand, but I wouldn't recommend it." As if summoned by his words, the rest of Alpha Team materialized from various entrances around the command center. Harrison and Rex from a maintenance tunnel that shouldn't have existed on their schematics. Martinez and Luna from what appeared to be a solid wall. Kim and Ghost from an air vent too small for human passage. Thompson and Thor through the main security checkpoint that should have been locked down. Rodriguez and Phantom simply walked through the primary blast doors as if they were open. "How?" Commander Zakthul's voice carried the weight of absolute defeat. Morrison gestured to his team and their companions. "You built your military doctrine around technological superiority, Commander. Superior weapons, superior defenses, superior sensors. But you never considered that the greatest weapon might not be technology at all." Saber padded forward and sat down directly in front of the towering Zephyrian commander. The massive dog looked up at the 12-foot-tall warrior without fear, his tail wagging slightly as if greeting a potential friend rather than facing an enemy. "Your dog shows no fear," observed Zakthul. "Because he trusts me completely," Morrison replied, "and I trust him the same way. That trust, built over years of shared experiences, creates a bond that can't be broken, can't be hacked, and can't be duplicated by technology." "But trust is not a weapon, isn't it?" Morrison asked. "Rex trusted Harrison enough to guide him through your tunnel system using senses you can't detect. Luna trusted Martinez enough to lead her through flooded passages that don't appear on your maps. Ghost trusted Kim enough to follow air currents to systems you thought were hidden." He gestured to the rest of his team. "Every success we achieved today was based on absolute trust between human and dog. We didn't need advanced technology because we had something better. Partners who understand each other perfectly. Sub-Commander Veltara stepped forward, her crystalline form reflecting the emergency lights. You're saying that emotional bonds are more effective than military technology? I'm saying that evolution created the perfect military partnership millions of years before your species developed energy weapons, Morrison replied. Humans and dogs learned to hunt together, fight together, survive together. We developed communication that goes beyond words, tactics that go beyond conventional strategy. But you're still just biological entities, protested another Zephyrian officer. You can be killed, injured, defeated, can we? Asked Sergeant Harrison, Rex moving to stand beside him. You had sensors that could detect the movement of individual molecules, but you couldn't track us. You had weapons that could disintegrate matter, but you couldn't target us. You had defenses that had never been breached, but we walked right through them. Because we don't think like you, added Lieutenant Kim, Ghost's mismatched eyes reflecting the command center's lights. We don't rely on technology to solve problems. We rely on instinct, intuition, and understanding that comes from millions of years of evolutionary partnership. Commander Zakthul looked around his command center, seeing his subordinates' expressions of confusion and defeat. His entire worldview, based on Zephyrian superiority through technological advancement, was crumbling before his eyes. What do you want? He asked finally. The same thing the Galactic Council wants, Morrison replied. An end to your expansion, the release of enslaved worlds, and a return to peaceful coexistence. And if we refuse? Morrison smiled, and there was something genuinely friendly in the expression despite the circumstances. Commander, you've just seen what 6 human dog teams can do to your most advanced fortress. We have thousands of these teams, and they're all just as capable as Alpha Team. Saber's tail wagged harder, as if he understood and approved of the conversation. More importantly, Morrison continued, we've learned that Zephyrian technology, for all its advancement, has a fundamental weakness. It relies on crystalline matrices that can be disrupted by techniques that don't require advanced technology at all. You would share this information with our enemies? Zakthul asked. We would share it with anyone who needed to defend themselves, Morrison corrected. Because that's what partners do. They protect each other. The command center fell silent again as the implications sank in. The Zephyrian military advantage, built over centuries of conquest and technological development, had been neutralized by an enemy that fought with methods they couldn't understand or counter. I need to contact the Zephyrian High Command, Zakthul said finally. Of course, Morrison agreed. But Commander, I should mention that we've already been in contact with them. What? While we were securing your fortress, our diplomatic team was meeting with your leadership. Ambassador Chen is quite persuasive when she wants to be. As if summoned by his words, the command center's communication system activated. The image of Sarah Chen appeared on the main display, standing in what was clearly a Zephyrian government chamber. Commander Zakthul, she said with a diplomatic smile, I'm pleased to report that the Zephyrian High Command has agreed to peace negotiations. Your demonstration of human military capabilities was quite convincing. The High Command surrendered? Veltara asked in disbelief. They negotiated, Sarah corrected. When faced with the choice between continued war against an enemy they couldn't defeat and peaceful coexistence with potential allies, they chose wisely. Commander Zakthul looked down at Saber, who was still sitting calmly in front of him, tail wagging gently. I don't understand. You could have destroyed us, enslaved us, conquered our worlds. Why offer peace instead? Morrison knelt beside Saber, scratching the dog behind the ears while looking up at the defeated Zephyrian commander. Because that's not what humans and dogs do, Commander. We don't conquer. We make friends. Saber's tail wagged even harder, and for the first time since the invasion began, Commander Zakthul found himself almost smiling. Perhaps, he said slowly, it's time the Zephyrian Empire learned about partnership instead of domination. 3 months later, the first joint human Zephyrian research station was established on the border between their territories. The project's security was provided by Alpha Team and their partners, who had somehow managed to befriend every Zephyrian on the station. No one was particularly surprised when Rex and Saber became the unofficial ambassadors between the two species, their enthusiasm for making new friends proving just as effective in peace as their partnership had been in war. After all, as Sarah Chen noted in her final report to the Galactic Council, Humans and dogs had spent millions of years turning enemies into family. The Zephyrians were just the latest species to discover what that really meant.